Alright guys, so in this video I need to talk about a lot of the comments that I got in my latest video where I talked about whether or not it was worth it trying to talk to others or convince others about antinatalism. And as you guys know, I have a lot of problems with haters on this channel and people just leaving negative and ignorant comments. And when I say ignorant comments, I'm talking about comments that are not there to leave constructive criticism or to just kind of leave their own opinion or just a discussion or to generate discussion or whatever. They're there to push their own opinion, to push their own agendas, and they're there to, just try and get me angry or something. Now, first and foremost, you guys know my policy on this, and I will be reiterating this later on in the video. But essentially, I will always have this problem, and I'm pretty sure that these people actively look for this kind of content. I don't think YouTube is sending these people my way, but still, it's just a bad thing that we have to deal with. It's just a negative thing that we have to deal with on this channel, and I'm going to explain all of that later on. But first of all, let me explain a lot of these comments that I got from mainly, well, pretty much exclusively opponents of antinatalism or pro-natalists or whatever. And I'm going to start from the least worst to the worst, pretty much. Now, first of all, the first comment that I got was from an individual who was calling antinatalism, quote, a cringe philosophy, or the most cringe philosophy that there is. He said that it was utilitarianism taken to its most logical, or sorry, not logical, but the most extreme point or something like that. And apparently he said that suffering is not bad unless it comes in the form of material deprivation. Now, notice that those arguments are not addressing anything to do with what I said in the video, are not addressing antinatalism as a philosophy or the ethics of procreation or whatever, or trying to justify it using logical arguments, right? I'll, at least this guy used philosophical language. At least he tried to kind of bring forward some points, right? But he didn't address anything relating to antinatalism, right? Those points were not really relating to the philosophy or the primarily the video. So I said, okay, do you have any actual points about the video? And then he said, your argument, or this is not really my argument, but the argument of Benatarian antinatalism is that without life, there is no suffering, right? Which, according to Benatarian antinatalism, is true. I don't believe that because non-existence isn't a thing, or probably isn't a thing, right? But I'm not going to get into that now. I've made videos on GSC. If you guys want, I'll link it in the description. But yeah, that's something for later on. But he then went on to say that apparently he then went on to make some point about relationships, even though I didn't talk about relationships at all in that video. And he went on to say that relationships are almost always a net benefit to the person, or they outweigh the negativity or something of the relationship. And I said, well, that's actually not true statistically. If you look at it, most relationships break up. A lot of friendships aren't long term. A lot of them are temporary, fake friends. I mean, there's a ton of arguments to be made, but ultimately these things should be for the individual to decide, right? But what does that have to do with antinatalism, right? And what does that have to do with my video, the points raised in the video, right? Nothing much, right? And then apparently he went on to say that he said some other points here and there, and then he went on to say that antinatalism apparently was a philosophy that only very depressed and boring people could believe. And I think he may have been trolling because I literally said, I brought up an example of a guy who was making a lot of nonsense arguments against antinatalism in the video as an example of who not to talk to about antinatalism. And then this guy basically parroted that word for word, saying anybody who believed it would check out. And I'm just like, I responded to that comment in full, but I mean, come on, that's just not true. That's pro-mortalism, right? And even most pro-mortalists don't check out because they have obligations to this world and to people around them and other things, right? And antinatalism is just that that coming into existence is a harm, right? Not that early death is preferable, right? It's just, come on. And just because they're emotionally, antinatalism may be very difficult to deal with for a lot of people, doesn't mean that that's what you should be judging it on, right? It's because it goes against our biology, right? And nature just wants to keep us, keep the cycle going, right? Now, he did say some other points, maybe I'll remember them, but for now, that's basically the gist of the argument. So, nothing really against antinatalism. And so, basically, then we move on to the next comment, right? This was from a snarky natalist. And basically, this guy said, "Oh, please carry on." He said, "This argument of yours is totally self-defeating because my legacy supposedly will live on. Meanwhile, yours will die out. And, this philosophy is ultimately self-defeating." Now, come on, these arguments have been disproven many times. Now, I've responded to that comment, but I'm going to just address these arguments now because I think it's important to address. Basically, when it comes, there's a difference between lineage and legacy. And I said as much in my response. There's a difference between lineage and legacy. Lineage is just continuing your bloodline and having people that have the same genetics as you and having the same physical features, right? And if you're, I guess you could say, a person who is more materialistic and, who cares about that stuff, okay, sure, but you're gambling with someone else's life and, that's not, there's a difference between, you need to have a good argument for imposing that, right? But most people just don't care, right? And that's the problem with natalists, right? With a lot of these people, right? So basically, moving on, he then said that, and also a legacy is something that you do for the world, right? It's a piece of work that you produce that gives you meaning and that gives people around you meaning and happiness, or maybe not happiness, but it cements your place in society or universe, or not the universe, but your place in that specific point in history. Not even, but it can just be something that people around you find meaningful or something that you find meaningful, whether it be a piece of art, a philosophical system, even just like creating a channel or something, or just improving yourself or whatever, right? That's leaving a legacy, right? And most people don't know or don't care about the difference, right? And it's ultimately pointless this goal of his, because ultimately all life on this planet will die out, right? We don't know where or when, but by not having children, you spare the children that you say you care about, right, from suffering and death, right? And the fact that these people don't even consider that, and I'm going to move on and tell you guys what this guy responded with. The fact that these people don't consider that is a problem, right? Now, he then went on to say that, oh, please, you made a point on this video, and I'm just reiterating it, which, I mean, not really, but, I already disproved this guy's argument, and he was saying, please, we as natalists really want you antinatalists to not have children. I'm like, well, of course you don't. Of course you don't, because you want to keep doing this forever, right? With no regard, for your children, for the well-being of your children, for the conditions that you're imposing on them, just no regard, right? And then he went on to say, oh, I became a natalist because I read something on the antinatalist subreddit, or I saw, quote unquote, the cringe or the rubbish that was being posted on the antinatalist subreddit. Now, I don't really look at the antinatalist subreddit, so I mean, I wouldn't know, but still, if you are basing your beliefs on procreation, right, which is a serious topic, on this, right, on the opinions of some people on social media, rather than the actual philosophy itself and rational argument and debate, I mean, that just shows everything that there needs to be, that there's no further argument to be had with these people. And so, I mean, yeah, I just left it there. And so, I mean, I did respond. I don't remember what I responded with, but I mean, come on. Now, those arguments weren't as bad as the other ones. But I've got two more arguments, and this is where the arguments started to get a little bit concerning. And they didn't address antinatalism at all. They addressed some kind of something else. I'll talk about it. Now, I had this one guy who said, apparently or supposedly, antinatalism is, quote, a psyop and a disease. And apparently, anybody who believed it was weird and should be put in a mental asylum or institution because apparently it's so obviously retarded. By the way, the punctuation in that comment, "it's now gone," was terrible. The grammar was terrible and everything else, but that doesn't matter. It's like, it's just like, what? Why would you leave that kind of comment? It's just haters trying to be haters, right? It's just there was nothing there. There were no points made. Just some nonsense claim that is not even worth responding to. But that claim that I should, quote unquote, be in an asylum is concerning, right? And then I got another comment, right, that talked about something similar, but they didn't start off this way. So they started off with a claim that apparently antinatalism is a first world problem, and apparently was being pushed by the quote unquote globalists or whatever the fuck in the West to reduce, as an anti-human agenda or something like that. I'm like, okay, well, even if that was true, right? Which, I mean, the evidence this guy provided later on was not even evidence. It was just an obscure claim, which, come on, it's just not true. I'll tell you guys later on. But to leave a comment like that, not addressing the arguments, and apparently, oh yeah, he quote asked me to, quote, please stop this lunacy, with no evidence, no argumentation, no points, right? I'm like, what lunacy? I'm like, that your comment, if anything, is ridiculous, right? And so I responded, and I reiterated a lot of the core points of antinatalism, or I'm like, are you going to address the philosophy, etc.? You guys know what I'm talking about. And this guy then comes back and says, okay, I'm gonna simplify it or something. Antinatalism is being pushed in the West. Why? Because apparently some globalist, according to him, some globalist agenda wanted to, quote, reduce the population in the West or something. Honestly, I didn't even bother to read it. And then apparently this person went on to make some claim about nature or something like that. But we are part of nature and we must follow what nature says and does. And if we don't do that, then we can't question nature or something like that. And I'm just like, do you realize that we are human beings with with intelligence, with consciousness, right? Most of us anyway, not like this individual, but most of us have the ability to question, to think, to examine the world around us. We don't just operate on instincts. Like, come on, it's so, like, these arguments are just terrible, right? The argument was actually worse. The argument that this guy made was worse than what I'm talking about in this video, right? But essentially, he made some claim that was not true. That some obscure claim that apparently some facility in Georgia in the USA, as I said before, was trying to reduce the Western population or something like that. And then, of course, there was no evidence for this because it's not true, most likely. But even if it was, it just wouldn't. It doesn't have anything to do with the philosophy. It doesn't have anything to do with the philosophy. He then went on to send a bunch of petty insults, childish, pathetic insults towards me. Apparently calling me weird, and saying that I, quote unquote, should be in a mental asylum. Now, interestingly, I responded to this guy's claim by saying, look, there are other conditions that are we can actually visualize and describe, and that are pretty obvious, that reduce the birth rate in the West. And this is actually happening worldwide. His actual claim, I remember now, his claim was that apparently other non-Western countries don't have this, according to him, problem. It's not a problem, it's a solution. And so, but I mean, everywhere there are antinatalists. Antinatalism is a tiny proportion of the population. Antinatalists are, right? Most people don't consider these kinds of arguments. Most people, if anything, a lot of people are not antinatalist or child free, but the reason why people are having less and less children is because of economic reasons, maybe chasing careers. There is a cost of living crisis in the West. As we said, uncertainty. There could be a World War III on the horizon. A lot of people are concerned about things like climate change. Whether they're house prices. I mean, there are just so many factors, and the fact that this individual chalks it down to something so obscure and ridiculous just made me laugh. But antinatalists, these people are not pushing antinatalism, like whoever these people are, right? So I didn't really engage with that comment. I did respond because, come on, that's ridiculous, but still, and come on, there's more important and more obvious factors that are at play there, right? Now, the thing is, right, these arguments were not addressing anything that I said, right? Anything that's said in the video, and if anything, they just proved the point perfectly. And that point was that, a lot of people just refuse to engage with these arguments, right? A lot of people just shut out these arguments, right? And most people are not open to evidence, right? Because most people just want to have children for selfish desires, or, they don't want to hear any kind of arguments in relation to this, or maybe emotionally it's too tough, right? But I'm not saying that most people should listen to antinatalist arguments, right? That's what I said in that video. I said as much, right? These people are a perfect example of that. It shows a lot of the intolerance, a lot of the ignorance, a lot of the ego of a lot of these natalists, right? And that the fact that they're not, and the fact that they can't resort to actual debate and constructive criticism is quite frankly sad. And a lot of these comments were pathetic. Not all of them, but a lot of the ones that came through a couple of days ago were just pathetic. And the one about me being apparently antinatalist should be in an asylum. I mean, come on, that's concerning. I've never gotten comments like that before. Sorry. And this is a YouTube channel. This is not some fucking site for all these weird people to come onto and just talk this rubbish. I don't know where these people come from. I don't know what these people are doing with their lives. I mean, quite frankly, it's pathetic. It's pathetic. Now, when we look back at a lot of these comments, there was one comment as well that I forgot to mention. And that was the comment, some pseudo-intellectual comment, assuming things about me, and using a lot of language that just didn't make sense. I'll admit I didn't read this because, judging by the previous comments, I could just tell it wasn't really worth my time. But I skimmed through it, and basically the gist of the argument was that, for me, apparently I was making some kind of argument about why I couldn't have children, and I was justifying it using antinatalism, which is, it's just not true at all. It's like these people just have no comprehension about antinatalism. So we've had assumptions, we've had threats, we've had abuse, we've had insults. No argumentation against antinatalism. No desire to wrestle with the ideas. It's pathetic from a lot of these people. Not all of them, right? The first guy's comment wasn't so bad. He might have just been, trolling or not understanding the philosophy, and that's not bad. But some of the later comments were just really, really pathetic and really poor. And so I'm just going to leave it there. But essentially what I want to say is that I think that video did its job perfectly. I think it kind of drew these people out and showed a lot of their opinions. Of course, this is not most people, but I'm just saying that these are how a lot of people are. And honestly, if anything, this just solidifies my conditional antinatalist stance. It's funny that I'm not even a full antinatalist. I am a conditional antinatalist, but these people just respond so viscerally to anything that goes against what they think. It just shows you. I've made videos on natalist psychology before, and it's just sad, really, that so many people just can't have rational debates about these serious topics. But yeah, anyway, sorry about this video, guys. I just had to make it. But yeah, I will be releasing my video about the new theology and the other video I'd mentioned in the post soon. I'm just doing the script for that now, and yeah, I hope you guys will enjoy that one. I think it's quite a good one. And I've got some other I've got some other videos coming out soon. But yeah, before I go, when it comes to these comments, it's just unfortunate that these people are coming onto my channel and leaving these kinds of comments. As you guys know, I've always had a problem with these people, especially like long-term subscribers know that I've had a problem with these kinds of people on my channel. So it is what it is, right? But you know, the only thing we can do is control our responses, and I didn't even get angry with these people, because what was there to get angry with? There was no substance, there was no these were just assumptions, and these were just, you know, insults and stupid threats, right? Not even threats. I mean, it's just stupid. Like there's no common sense, there's no argumentation, nothing. Why should I get angry? Why should you guys get angry, right? For what? I mean, you know, stupid. And quite frankly, it says everything you need to know about these people, that they would come on a video with, at the time, not even 100 views and write these kinds of stupid comments. But yeah, anyway, so yeah, you know, you guys know my policy on this. I have removed a lot of those comments in question, because I don't want this to, I want this to be a space where we can discuss these issues freely without this kind of shit. But anyway, see you guys in the next one.